What's up, rogues? So, Season 6, what's the new cool thing to play? It is definitely going to be the brand new Dance of Knives build. It is definitely going to be the best build in the game for speed because, well, you get to basically play a Whirlwind Barbarian, but you shoot knives everywhere. One really awesome addition to the game, and it is very easy to play. There are several different variations. This one is what I'm going to be considering kind of the best build for most players, as it's going to be easier to snapshot because how it works is right now on the PTR, what you're able to do is you're able to activate all these bonuses to your next skill. And because our skill is channeled, meaning we just kind of use it forever until we stop or we run out of our little resource here, but it technically gets all of the bonuses snapshotted to that. Now, will that change in the live game? I'm not sure. But right now, it is definitely going to be one of the top tier builds, as you can go through most content in this game very, very fast. I've even tried this on the Tormented 4 bosses. Very, very good build. Actually, one of the best builds for leveling as well, especially if you do Shadow. This one, though, is going to be mainly focused in on Cold Imbue, but there are poison variants. There's actually a variant where it doesn't rely on Victimize. This variant is going to mostly do its damage with Victimize, but you can play it several different ways. But just as a heads up, if you want to play the harder version of the build, you do have to have all these little checkboxes that you have to look down and read on your bar that make the build a little bit clunky. So I'm going to recommend this one for most people, as a lot of people ask, what's your favorite build to play in terms of the Dance of Knives? Is it the poison? Is it going to be the cold? Or even the shadow one? I like the really easy variant, and we're going to go ahead and start off with 65, and then eventually we'll do some higher level pits here. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the build. So for starters, let's go over the skills and how we use them. So for starters, we play Cold Imbuement. Cold Imbuement allows us to basically activate it and keep it up the whole time. That's going to apply vulnerability and give us a multiplier or a better chance to freeze, which will activate Frigid Finesse. Then we basically just hold down Dance of Knives. Remember though that you don't want to activate Cold Imbue in the middle of Dance of Knives and expect to get the Cold Imbue. You have to push the Cold Imbue first, then you activate the Dance of Knives, then you go around. That's basically how it works. And then with Concealment, it does break crowd control. Now, as far as I'm aware of, sometimes this kind of breaks in the snapshot effectiveness. What it's supposed to do is give us 100% crit and vulnerability. This already gives us vulnerability, but you can see in terms of the numbers, I mean, it does work, but there are times where it sometimes doesn't work always. We'll see if that actually does change. Then we just run Dark Shroud. We do have Umbrus, so we don't actually need to equip it on a bar, but there's an extra slot here. Feel free to run whatever you want to. And then we have Shadow Step and Dash just for extra agility, and Shadow Step does break crowd control, so I specifically like it for that reason. And then for our specialization, we can play pretty much whatever. I've actually swapped to Inner Sight. Before, like, I was just like, whatever. It did not matter what we selected. But Inner Sight will actually give you the most value, as we have now known that True Sight is actually getting a buff. It won't show here, but there is another multiplier once it is activated. This is just simply going to be the better option because it's going to give us another multiplier of 45x damage is, I believe, what it is. It's really, really solid to have this, and that is when Inner Sight is maxed out. Plus, giving us extra crit is definitely not bad at all. It's just in this variant over here, I just didn't happen to have equip. I was showing you guys that like, you could do whatever you want. You can try combo points as well, although combo points doesn't really do anything other than there is something that says it does something with combo points, which we do equip, called the Star Shards, but you don't really need to utilize that combo points variant of it. But Inner Sight is definitely going to give you the better value here. As far as our gear goes, this is what we're running for gear. We're running the new Ire of Perdition. This is a great thing because this build does rely off of lucky hit chance, so getting crit, getting lucky hit is going to be excellent for our build. And then also movement speed is great. So this is a brand new mythic, but remember, mythics are going to be easier to acquire, especially getting those greater affixes in the next upcoming seasons, especially since now we don't even have to use some of the Stygian stones now. And then for our chest piece, we're going to run Tyrael's Might, but eventually, once you start getting in the higher Paragons, pretty much every build will start off with Tyrael's Might, and I think most builds will want to run the Shroud of False Death. That thing gives you so much more damage, and that's going to make the build even stronger. But for most people that won't hit the maximum Paragon, which is going to be 300, Tyrael's Might is going to be kind of your go-to. And then we are also going to be running Fist of Fate. We do want to try to get that lucky hit chance because that's how we can scale our damage with Victimize. And then we're also running the Umbrus aspect. Nothing too important to really know as far as any of the roles here, other than getting like lucky hit is obviously good. but you get so much lucky hit chance with the Fist of Fate if you get that thing greater affix. That's the most important thing. But getting dex, maximum life, those are all good things to actually hit. And then if you can temper on the chance to freeze, that's great, but no worries if you don't, because Fist of Fate usually facilitates that, but that's kind of like the better choice out of all of them. Now next up, you can play a regular pair of boots. You can get movement speed, you can get any defensive stats on it, and then dexterity. That would be the ideal roll. If you do want more damage, Penitent Greaves are actually excellent. They did get a buff, so you get the bonus critical strike chance against chilled enemies, which this build, once you activate your cold imbue, everything will be cold imbued until you stop. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I threw out 6 knives, oh, it's gone. No, this thing will stay until you stop channeling, which may be nerfed, but either way, I like it the way it works right now, and even if that does get changed, Penitent Greaves will still be excellent because you can still just kind of go. I know I don't have it in the gameplay, I didn't get perfect ones in terms of the PTR, but you definitely can consider these to be one of the best in the slot because it gives you consistent 25x if you do happen to have a good one, and most people will eventually acquire these. These are usually just like thrown away, but they're actually not bad at all because you also get Chill Slow Potency, which can help actually freeze targets even faster. And then we are running the aspect of True Sight. There's not very many really great solid choices for aspects here. You can even run like Intercom if you want to in one of these slots. But basically, True Sight just gives you the bigger multiplier here. And where you can get the bonuses, you definitely want to try to get as much vulnerable damage as possible. So that's one thing that you want to try to roll every single piece of gear. That's what you want. But right here, I know it says a chance for barrage. The build website does not have the chance for Dance of Nice projectiles cast twice, but that's what you want to go ahead and masterwork. That's the most important thing to actually get. Once that's at 100, maybe you get like a really god roll, and maybe in your other one you get like a really good roll. And then at that point, I guess vulnerable would be okay as well. But definitely want to try to get that to be 100%. Past 100% does not do anything better. And then for our amulet over here, ideally if we can get Frigid Finesse, Malice is really good. We want to scale as much vulnerable damage as possible, as that is our big source of damage. I decided to throw in Concussive Strikes because it is defensive, because it does actually daze the enemies, and when we daze enemies, we get a little bonus on trick attacks, so it is okay for that. But if you don't want to run Concussive Strikes, that's totally fine. You can even run any other defensive aspect here if you want to, maybe even throw in a Tibalt's for even more damage, or you can throw in Umbras here. You can actually run the ability to gain Dark Shrouds as a rune word as well. There's a lot of different ways to go for it, but that's one where, like, using the amulet, I try to put something that gives us, like, more numerical stats, and Concussive Strike just gives us a decent little numerical stat over there, but you can throw elements in your amulet if you want to. I just like, 100% efficiency. Cold Clip can also be thrown in the amulet if you want to, but what it does is it just gives us that bonus. You deal X increased damage to enemies who are chilled or frozen, so nice little bonus with that thing over there, and even though it has a bonus of like your basic skills are always called to be, we don't run a basic skill, so don't worry about that part. We're just here for the bonus of the X multiplier. You can run Intercom if you want to. It's a lower multiplier. If you do spin into like a corner, it will count you as holding still, so you can get the multiple stacks of Intercom, but basically just vulnerable at every single spot that you can go for it. And then to even go further in our attack speed, we're going to be using Ashira's Kanjar. This is a item that did get buffed in the previous season, and it's a pretty solid item, giving us up to 40% increased attack speed, which is great. There's nothing else that's going to compete with that. Normally, I would want to run Accelerating into my two-hander, but we don't use a core skill, unfortunately, so it won't work, or no basic skill. And then we have Aspect of Star Shards. How this works is when you throw down your daggers, it's going to split into like basically a star. That's why it's called the Star Shards. So it's really excellent for hitting multiple enemies with that. You can see we're kind of, we're going to go higher into here in just a moment here. But most of the boss fights, they're pretty fast. You don't need to stagger. You can run control if you want to. I decided to play with Canny because I like Canny over control as far as the glyphs go. But as far as the runes go, we're running a Bach Ohm, so we get the Barbarian Shout, which gives us extra damage, and we're running the one where we get it when we move because we're always moving. And then for the other one, a lot of people opt to run like the one where you either cast a skill or you hold still. Because we're so active here, Neo is actually really great, especially with the Shroud of False Death. Neo makes it so you deal damage after you don't take damage, and then we also have Yom, which can be the Druid's Petrify, so it's going to stun everything. But this one is optional. Honestly, you could just get away with running more Emeralds because it's just another multiplier. But if you really want to have that extra fun of playing with the Runewords, I like this one. This is a good combo. You can actually run a couple different ones. You can run the one that gives you plus all skills, but Bach Ohm is definitely one of the best ones here. This one, I would put it in the weapon, and then the other one, if you want to drop it, feel free to drop it. It's really not that important. And then for our sockets here on the weapons, we want the Sapphires because more vulnerable damage. And then we also want to get emeralds for more dexterity, and then we're running skulls to fulfill our armor requirements. Teros Might will solve all resistances, but later on, if you get enough armor, like in the Paragon board, feel free to swap some of these to maybe diamonds, and then you can res cap, and then swap off Terials, and then run the Shroud of False Death, which again, probably one of the top tier things in the next upcoming season. So now that we went over the gear, let's go over the skill tree. So as far as the skill tree goes, I'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger for you guys. But it starts off with it doesn't matter, and then it goes into all these other bonuses. Most of our damage will be coming from Victimize, but I had extra points because we get 69 points in the new season, so I decided to go ahead and give us some more damage. Looking at some of the numerical stats on putting more points into Dance of Knives, even though this doesn't do our main source of damage, you can actually get a decent amount of damage with this. It could be anywhere from 15 to 5% of your damage. While that is maybe small, you know, if you're thinking, oh, that's only 15% more damage, like my whole damage is coming from Victimize, this still does a decent amount of damage, and it will add up over time, so it's definitely something you can run. But if you want more defenses, you can go ahead and only put 1 point into it, as this is not your main source of damage. But we got all the bonus damages over here. I like to have multiple dashes just because it makes the build faster in between packs. And then we're running the extra crit over here. We're getting this where it guarantees the vulnerable and crit with the concealment, which actually breaks crowd controls as well. If you really want to, you could throw smoke grenade in there and get like another multiplier of X25, but I like the build just holding it down and moving. I wanted this version of the build to be like the version that most people want to gravitate towards, because it's super smooth. You activate it and you go. You don't have to be like, I gotta activate this, gotta activate caltrops. I've always hated caltrops, and all these things that slow down the build make the build not the fastest version of the Dance of Knives, which is kind of what the goal is. It's almost like a god DH if you've ever played Diablo 3. And then we max out Frigid Finesse. We also get the imbued skills, get increased critical strike chance. And then we got the cold imbue over here. Oh, we're at the boss. I just want to show you guys, we are going up in difficulty, but the thing definitely does melt. You can see we're going up every 3 tiers over here in the gameplay. But like the boss battles are quite fast. You can do up to 100, but don't expect the 100 boss fight to like die in 5 seconds. It will take probably a few minutes. It's not going to be instant. It's not like my Thorns Whirlwind Barbarian, which can literally delete the boss in 1 second. It's not that fast, but this build is still definitely one of the top tier builds in the game right now. And if you want to run the version that can snapshot, I'm going to make a separate video for that. But that's like only like a 1% or sort of a build, because it does technically get you more damage, but you got all these clunky mechanics to have to kind of maintain. And then we're getting the extra lucky hit chance because we are going to be cold imbued 24/7. And then we get the other one with extra movement speed. I like the extra movement speed, which is quite nice. We don't spend resources, so no second wind, sadly. And then we are running, of course, Victimize. Victimize got a massive buff in Season 6. Basically, it finally works again. This skill is, this like key passive is always really weird because it's either like so garbage that no one plays it. Then in Season 4, it was so good that everyone played it. And then Season 5, they're like, let's delete it. And then Season 6, it's back again. So this is going to be a hot thing for one season, and maybe in Season 7, they're going to delete it again. I don't know why this skill is always like super OP or terrible, but you know, right now is good. So run it this season before it gets nerfed maybe again. But honestly, their philosophy in this game, there was like a core pillars, and this is like at the Blizzard HQ. They said that they wanted to shift up the meta. So more likely what's going to happen is they're going to nerf it next season, and then it's going to be good in Season 8. So that's my assumption with what's going to happen to Victimize. Now, as far as the Paragon board, now we have a bunch of extra Paragon points. Keep in mind, you don't need all the Paragon points to make this build functional. About 200 will get most builds in Season 6 functional, but I just had to fill up the extra things. Even though we have Terials, I just had to fill up the extra points. Eventually, though, once you get enough resistances, because I started to tag all the resistance nodes, once you get enough resistances, drop Terials, run the Shroud of False Death, you're going to go crazy in damage. I don't obviously have in the gameplay. In the gameplay, we are 225. Again, about 200 is like what you will get, and the build will start to feel really good. So get Headhunter. We want to get all the dex nodes, so we get all of the bonuses here. Quite great stuff indeed. And then we move into Chip, into the brand new Dance Macabre. So this is another thing that you can snapshot, which after you use a mobility or subterfuge, it increases the damage of your next skill. Since we basically get the skill the whole time, it's just an X50 multiplier. Now that doesn't include the Victimize, unfortunately. This is just the skill damage. So that's going to be your Dance of Knives. That's why I decided to put some extra points, because this board is actually pretty good. It gives you, damage to close, damage reduction. You get damage to distance, because you can utilize both of these. These are great boards, and there's damage to healthy enemies, and then there's also extra life here. It's one of the best new boards. Every single class got one of the newer boards here. Now, one thing to mention, the Petrify, I'm not sure if this is intended. The Petrify counts as an ultimate, so we can run Note Witness. If you want to run Note Witness, by all means, go for Note Witness. It is definitely a great thing to include into the build as well. But we're running Chip here, and I know it's supposed to say, like, it says physical. There is a bonus to X vulnerable damage that doesn't show up. It's specifically once you start leveling it up, there's a second legendary bonus. So this one over here, you can run control until you get this one up high enough, and then you will get a good amount of a bonus over here with that. And then we are going to be moving into Eldritch Bounty with Exploit. And again, there's actually a few extra like points that you can put into like whatever. Like we're already going to be armor capped, but there really wasn't really anything to put in. So we can actually maybe fill out that one over there. But there's a lot of extra points in a lot of builds nowadays. But in the second... well, technically this is the third board, but it's the second one that you get. We go to Eldritch Bounty with Exploit, so this is going to give us a legendary bonus on Exploit as well. And then we get the Eldritch Bounty, so we do extra bonus cold damage. And then we move into Cheap Shot with Dimmish. This also does the same thing. There's an X multiplier over here. That's why we play this one. It's actually quite nice to get all the bonuses to rare, because we want as much vulnerable damage as possible. You can go crazy with the damage, and then we got all these resistances and extra damage to crowd control. And then we get Canny for our final one over here, and we socket in Canny in Exploit Weakness, and we get all the other resistance nodes. But pretty much that is going to be the Paragon board for this build. But anyways, let me know, guys, what you think of it. If you've played it, let me know your thoughts down below on it. If there's any things that we can do to improve it, definitely let me know, and I'll be updating this guide if things do change, as maybe they will change some of the snapshottingness. Fingers crossed, though, that they don't change the imbuement, but if they change, like, concealment, it's fine. It's really not a big deal. It's basically, I like having the ability to have cold imbuement up 24/7, so we always, chill and freeze the enemies, and you get to see all the blue things kind of shoot out. It's very, very fantastic. But have some fun with the build, guys. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it if you want to be updated with this build as well as other builds coming out in the future. Subscribe, turn the bell. You'll see more very soon. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and everything will be pinned down below for the Mobalytics Planner.